Welcome, all my precious relations. I'm so excited that you're here, and we have an amazing guest today. So, welcome back to Two-Legged Experience, the place where we are here to amplify the voices of leaders, healers, elders from all over the hoop of life. And we've begun this whole process with looking initially at Indigenous leaders. And of course, we're quite diverse. So I'm very excited about the guests that I have today. But the key thing, one of the key things of why we're doing this is that in this conversation and all of this is to help change the conversation, the narrative in the larger context around the world of moving away from separation to inclusion, from depression to one of just optimism, but hope in action and many other things. So I'm just delighted that you're here as we kick off this amazing time that is opening up to even more and more possibilities. So with me today is Cynthia Ruiz, who is amazing, amazing woman. I'm so happy that you're here and honored. I feel like she's a sister I've met a handful of years ago, and but it feels like it's been decades. I'm not going to go into all the things about her. You'll be able to read some about on the website of twoleggedexperience.com. And of course, it'll be in my newsletter. But she's received close to 75 or more awards and accolades for the work that she does. And you'll know very soon as she begins sharing her experiences like, oh, wow, this woman is inspiring. And she's just like, she just goes for it and does it in such a way that lifts up so many. So it's just absolutely wonderful. She's been in Hispanic Lifestyle magazine, so you'll learn from her. She's not only Cherokee, she's also Latina, Hispanic. Was in 2018 Latina of Influence. She's co-founder of the Yo Tambien Healing Movement, one in which I was honored to be one of the co-authors in that book with her, and the others who are just so amazing. She just is a dear, dear person, and I don't want to take any more time because I really want you to hear from her. And so with that, I want to get into some of the questions, which may only be one or maybe many. I don't know, Cynthia, but welcome.
Oh, Anita, Dr. Sanchez, just thank you so much. I start everything I do with gratitude. So I just want to express my gratitude to you for you showing up every day, and you inspired me. And so really quick, I'm going to give the backstory of how I even met you. So a few years ago, I was on the website for Transformational Leadership Council, which is the council of all the heavy hitters in the personal development field. And I was looking at everybody and nobody looked like me until I came to you. And I'm like, wow, this is a Latina that's indigenous. She's a badass, excuse my language. And I went to your website and I saved it. And then maybe about 6 months later, a mutual friend, and I don't even want to call her friend, acquaintance, Michelle Ruiz, no relation to myself, and it says you two have to meet. And I'm like, yes, I've been wanting to meet her. So I like to say I manifested you in my life because I looked up and I said, wow, I was inspired by you and I didn't even know you. And now that I've gotten to know you, you inspire so many people, and you are one of the most humble, authentic, powerful, strong women that I have ever met. So I just wanted to share that with the audience and express my gratitude to you for even having this platform.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm deeply honored. But yes, so I don't make light of that. It's really very, very wonderful. Let's begin at the beginning. Just tell people a little bit about your personal story. People who come and listen want to know about, a little bit about your early years up to now, just whatever you want. And then we can get into some other questions. But I just want to give the space and grace over to you. So tell us about you.
Okay, well, thank you for that question. So, as you mentioned, I'm half Latina. So, on my dad's side, I'm Mexican. My grandparents came from Mexico to Los Angeles. I live in Los Angeles. They came over 100 years ago. So, my dad was born in Los Angeles. On my mom's side, we're Cherokee from Oklahoma. The Cherokee Nation is in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. So on my mom's side, I come from a lineage of strong Cherokee women. So what I like to say is I have the best of both worlds. From my Latina side, I get my passion for life and my love for music and dance. But my native side, I get my spirituality and love from Mother Earth. So today I'm happy, healthy, and complete. However, where I started was a much different place. I grew up in Los Angeles, surrounded by gangs and drugs. My parents divorced when I was just 7 years old. So at that time, my mom, since she was married to a macho Mexican, had never worked, found herself divorced with four children. So she got on welfare. She got on welfare and used welfare, in my opinion, how it should be for a short period of time. So then she went, got some education, and went to work for the County of Los Angeles, where she spent her whole career. And she was the Native American liaison between the County of Los Angeles Health Department and the community. So here in Los Angeles, I grew up in the Native American community. And it was not an easy community because you had tribal differences. And then you also had the differences between native, uh, urban and reservation natives. So it was a quite, complicated community, but I really cherished it and I really met so many amazing people. But in my youth, I struggled. I didn't fit in anywhere. I don't speak Spanish, so I didn't fit into the Latina side. And being an urban native, I didn't really fit in with the reservation people. So it was quite interesting. I was the first person in my family to go to college because I looked around and saw if I get some education, that's my ticket out of this current environment. I have an older brother, I have three brothers, but my older brother made very different decisions. He decided to get involved in gangs, which took him down a pathway of being in and out of prison his whole life, and he ended up to be a heroin addict. So I really believe it's about the choices we make in our life. I'm not better than anybody. I've had a lot of struggles. So and Anita alluded to the Yo También healing movement. I was sexually traumatized when I was just 17 years old. I was violently raped, and that experience I carried with me. I didn't report it to the police because in our communities, we didn't even trust the police. I never reported it, so I buried that. So I graduated high school when I was 17, went on to college, and it was a new experience for me because nobody, could even give me money to go to college. I had to just figure out everything on my own. So what ended up happening, after a year in college, met somebody and became involved in a relationship. And soon as I got my BA degree, we got married. But then I found myself in a physically abusive relationship. But I think I gravitated towards that relationship because the sexual trauma made me feel not safe. So I wanted to feel safe. So then I got into a situation where I was, trauma on top of trauma,
Right.
but I was determined to keep going. So I graduated with my master's degree by the time I was 23. And then a few years later, I had my son. And I also have one son. I also am a PhD dropout because by the time I got into a PhD program in psychology, I had just started my own business. I was married and had a toddler and realized I couldn't do everything. And as many times as women, sometimes we have to make decisions. So I chose the decision to invest my time and energy into my family and into the business. So with my family, unfortunately, the marriage didn't work out, but that was actually a good thing for me. But my son grew up and he's this amazing man. And for the business that I started at the time, I was able to grow that to $1 million a year business, a counseling business. So much trauma, much trials and tribulations. But once I really got out on my own, my career has taken me down many turns and twists. I've been an executive for the city of Los Angeles. I ran the public works department, which was 6,000 people. I was an executive at the Port of Los Angeles, which is the largest container port in the United States. Uh, Lots of twists and turns, and I'm so grateful for every experience that I've had because it's made me the woman I am today. As you mentioned, I'm an author. I mean, I'm still, in disbelief that I am either authored or co-authored 8 books because growing up, I didn't even know an author. So it's sometimes it's that perseverance and just figuring it out. And at this point, my mission statement in my life is to be a beneficial presence on this planet. Today, I'm a professor. I teach leadership and business at a graduate level. I'm president of the city's pension board, overseeing $24 billion worth of investments. So for me, I'm an example that anything is possible. I started out on welfare, and now the mayor of the city of Los Angeles entrusts me to oversee $24 billion. I mean, tell me
Yes,
if that's not a miracle. So
that is.
I believe anything's possible. You just have to, first of all, believe it's possible. You have to do the work, and nobody said the work's going to be easy. And you have to never give up. I like to tell people my motto for 2022 is rise and shine. Rise to your power and shine your light. And we each have that light inside of us. And let that light shine. Don't let anybody dim your light because there's a lot of people that will try. Society tries. I mean, as a Indigenous Latina, there's so many obstacles against me, through society. But you just got to let your light shine and be authentic and stand in your truth. And when you do that, miracles happen. So my life is a true testament of the miracles and being connected to the creator, because I use the term creator because from my Cherokee side, I can say God. I don't have a problem with using God, universal consciousness, whatever you believe, get connected to that, and your life can be amazing. And it's all about your choices and doing the work. And I'm just today, when people ask me how I'm doing, I just simply say I'm blessed and grateful.
Yes. And you talk about shining your light. You always do. And yet, I think what's helpful for people to hear, and that's what I love about you and the other guests who come on is being real. It doesn't mean you arrived and everything is just, easy. And it's so easy for us to think. And when we see, but how does their life be so easy, whether you're urban or reservation Indian, whether you're whatever racial, ethnic background you are, whatever age, and that's just usually not the case. There are challenges, and clearly for women of color, there are the variety of those. But it's about, are we going to take it in and have it then get us stuck, or are we going to move forward, not denying those obstacles are there, but just not letting them stop us, that they're somehow over, under, around, through, whatever, that those obstacles were able to penetrate and become and be, like you said, just a really life-giving source on this planet. And so I just love that for people to hear, because I think we're also in a time, there's so much trauma that people are experiencing, that it's so easy to just go, well, this is just the normal. And the reality, and what I'm hearing in your story of going through so many different kinds of hardship, is that it is not normal. What is normal is for people to be lit up, for people to be passionate, for people to use their gifts. And in doing that, although you went into areas you didn't know, you had a mother who just continued to go, right? So it makes sense to me, like even your ancestors, that you went on to college, you went on to do things, and you didn't maybe have support, as you said, people who knew before how you did this, but you just did it, and you are still continuing to do that. So that I want to have people really hear those messages. And there are always people both inside yourself to find that creator, find that light that's inside of each of us, but also there are people around to give support. Because I have also watched you over the handful of years, is that how much you always are reaching out to support other people. And the other people, some of them are names that are really well known, and some are people that maybe will never be known by the masses, but they are important. Every one of us is. So I want you to share a little bit, as you shared with us the broad brush of some really key things. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing some of the really tough stuff that you went through. How did you um, maybe give a story, one or two stories about, what was it that in your lineage or in what was experiencing around you that helped you kept going forward? I hear you kept saying you choice, but how did you know that? What were you calling upon to be able to do that?
Great question. Well, I think a lot of it had to do with my spiritual journey. And my spiritual journey, as we all know, is an individual thing. So I was able to tap into my ancestors. And one of the main things that I learned from Cherokee values is harmony and balance. It's about staying in that harmony and balance and staying grounded. And as Cherokees, we're taught the oneness. We're all connected to each other. We're not only connected to each other, we're connected to everything that's ever been or everything that ever will be. And once you have that understanding that you're one part of this bigger thing, then to me, it comes like with responsibility. And I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned very early on is walk through your fear. I mean, it was terrifying for me at 17 years old to walk onto a college campus that I had never been to and didn't have any friends and didn't have any money and didn't know what I was doing. And I said, just walk through your fear and just keep going. Because I think what happens is that when we have challenges, and every single person is going to have challenges in their life, you have a choice. You can say, is this a lesson, and look at what the lesson is? Or unfortunately, what so many people do is they become victims. They
Mm.
become victims of the circumstance and say, oh, poor me, this happened to me. And that's so unempowering. And I just said, okay. And I've had many, many challenges through my career and my life. And I just keep going no matter what. Because one very key thing I learned is everything is temporary. Everything in life is temporary, the good times and the bad times. So
Mm.
it really helps me focus on appreciating and savoring the good times. And in the bad times and the dark times, because we all have them, realizing I am going to get through this. There is like the day after the rain, it's the most beautiful day. But during the storm, it's kind of hard. So sometimes you just have to hunker down. And so for me, I developed my spiritual practice, and every day I do three things. First thing I do when I open my eyes in the morning is I do my gratitude list. What am I grateful for? And then throughout the day, I pray and meditate. So I like to say prayer is talking to the Creator, and meditation is listening. Now, the most challenging thing for me was meditation. It took me years to develop a meditative practice because I would sit down and then I'm a Capricorn, so I'm like a go getter, right? And so I'd sit down and start saying, okay, doing my list of things to do in my head. Okay, I got to go to the store and buy milk. I got to do this. And so actually, I go to a place called Agape Spiritual Center in Los Angeles, Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, and I took a meditation class with him. And I something shifted because he said, when you hear noises in meditation, don't give them energy. Acknowledge them and let them float away. So if I would hear the dog barking, then all of a sudden I was fixated on the dog barking and the dog's barking. And so I just said, okay, I acknowledge dog barking, let it go. And it really helped me develop, fine tune my meditative practice, which is part of my daily routine and ritual. And speaking of ritual, I also do ceremony with some of my Indigenous friends. And so when you really think about it, it's really getting in tune with the rhythm of life in terms of everything runs in a cycle. Seasons run in a cycle. The moon runs in a cycle. life is a cycle. My mom just ended her cycle last year. She made her transition. So everything is in cycles. And once you get into that flow of nature and the flow of the universe, it just makes life so much easier. But to do that, what I had to do is surrender. That was the
Yes.
hardest thing for me because I like
Yeah.
to control things and set goals. But so once the most profound thing that ever happened in my life is once I surrendered to the creator and said, Creator, I'm here to be of service. I'm here to be a vehicle. And that's when the magic really happened.
I agree with you. I think that is so true. And just hearing you talk, I could feel my own body just calming down because what you're describing in your practice is one that sometimes people think was meditation is like, okay, I have to be 45 minutes, I have to be still. It's not that. It's when you get quiet to really be part of the realization that you're part of the sacred motion that is always present. It does change things and open it up. So I hope that with your excitement, as you shared that, that others will be called to that. And there's all different ways to do that. You can do like Thich Nhat Hanh. He talks about the walking meditation. So it doesn't always have to be sitting or whatever, but key is being still enough so that you can listen.
Mm.
Listen to what's not only inside, what's outside in nature, and understand, just like you are part of nature, you're part of the sacred motion that's occurring at all times. So
And
thank
I
you for
think
that. I feel like I just went through a little bit of
Well, I think it's really also important to just acknowledge where you are on your journey. People,
Mhm.
we're in a quick fix society, so we want to be there. We want to be enlightened, whatever that means. And it's really part of the process and part of the journey. And my spiritual journey has been many, many years in the making. There was even one point that I went on a spiritual vacation and I went and spent a week with Deepak Chopra and I went and spent a weekend with Oprah and went to go see Wayne Dyer speak and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, this is my vacation. I'm gonna spend all this money instead of going on vacation, just my spiritual journey. And it was very interesting because as I went through this process, the one thing that everybody I respected and admired had in common, they all meditated. And I'm like, wait a minute, the answer is to sit still and do nothing? I thought I had to go do something. No, the magic happens when you sit still and listen.
Yes, it absolutely does. And so oftentimes people think about manifesting as a doing, but oftentimes the manifesting is actually being still and allowing yourself the space to actually witness when it comes, to acknowledge when it comes, because all too often we miss things if we're not paying attention. And so it's not even requiring you to say no, it's just you're not being present. So what I know of you is that do a really, it's just part of who you are. Your being is being present to what we're talking about right now or whatever moment is occurring. So I love you for that. And um, I know that people would love to hear um, if you could tell us with all the amazing things you've done, and what is a high point experience in your life? And you could name one or two, and then what did you learn from that that you could share with us?
So my very first highlight of my life is giving birth to my son. Having and you're a mom, you start off with this baby that has nothing, right? They don't they have to, you have to care for them, and then you watch them grow and develop. And for me, it was very important to make sure that I was supporting my son in his journey and not trying to force my expectations onto him. And the reason I say that is because my son's tall, I'm tall, my son is 6'4". So when he was in high school, the basketball coaches would chase me down and say, make him play basketball, make him play basketball. So I took him out and we practiced and he was really good. And I said, okay, do you want to play basketball? He goes, nope. He's a creative, he's a Pisces, he's just a creative kind of guy, not competitive. And I said, okay, I'm not going to force you to do something you don't want, but doing nothing's not an option. You have to pick something. So he comes back and he goes, Mom, I want to be the editor of the yearbook. I'm like, okay, be the best editor of the yearbook ever. And so he went to yearbook camp I didn't even know there was such a thing. And he did. And so he, after he graduated from college, he became a fashion stylist because he's very creative. And now he's the head stylist for Nickelodeon. And he loves what he does because he's able to use that creativity. So being a mom was the first thing. And I think for me, my life has been a combination of the big moments and the small moments. So the
Mm.
big moments, as you mentioned, I've received over 76 accolades and awards. And the reason I know that number is because during the pandemic, I spent the time to catalog all of them. And, of course, there's been a lot of highlights, and a couple that come to mind is when I received the Hollywood Chamber Women of Distinction Award, and not because it was a Hollywood Chamber, it's because my mom went with me, and that was
Ah,
the first time in my entire life my mom ever said she was proud of me. So that was like significant. And then I've been very honored in the last couple of years. Cherokee Nation has honored me. They gave me the Community Leader of the Year award, and then last month they gave me the Seven Feathers award. So that was very symbolic because I'm being honored and acknowledged by my people that I give so much to. But the
yeah.
smaller moments, I get equal joy. And when I get an email from somebody that says, I heard you speak, I read your book, I met you one time, and you changed my life. That gives me equal, satisfaction in addition to the big moments, the small moments. And when they add up, it just feels like so complete. And that's why I say I'm blessed and grateful. And every morning when I wake up after my gratitude list, I say, Creator, show me where I can be of service today. And I never know how it's going to show up. Actually, recently I had a situation where my neighbor called me and said, hey, my daughter's in Girl Scouts and they need a speaker to talk about democracy. You want to speak? I'm like, it's on Zoom. I said, sure. And so I spent the afternoon with these young, 7 and 8 year olds, and they were just like in awe. They're like eating it all up because I wanted to give them, talk about democracy, but talk
Mhm.
about it in the ways that they could understand. And so they were so excited. They're like, we want you back. We want, can you come to our meetings? And to me, that just gave me so much satisfaction. So I never know where I'm going to be of service. It just that I'm being open and being that vehicle. So all those small moments add up to the big moment of my life.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that because I think it is obviously getting the Seven Feather Award and being honored of all the Cherokees, which is a huge nation in this country, to be, a community leader to get that award is incredible. And I think for all of us is that sometimes we get these outward recognitions, but it's also the individual that anything, sometimes it can be a smile. It doesn't even have to be a talk that's amazing that you gave, but anything that can change the life of what is happening. We have so much power. And early on, as we started, what I loved you saying, because I hear it from so many Indigenous people and Latinas as well, is this that there's power, but always with that, you talk about responsibility. So it's not just about me, me, me. It's the responsibility and being part of this hoop of life that, of course, then you would be the give and the take. The flow has to be there, and that's what I hear in the stories and the things that the contributions that you made. So thank you for the big and the small, the examples. And hopefully people are listening to and going, it's starting to make them take tally. And I think it's important to make tally, maybe even consider writing it down as you did so that you really can see it. Because sometimes when things get tough, you can remind yourself, hey, I've been through tough times before. And look at what I've contributed to my life and all those lives I've touched, both two-legged human beings, but as well as nature, your pets, whatever, all of that. So I think would be a really good practice for us as we kick off
So
this
thank
time.
you for bringing up the issue of responsibility. So one of the highlights I didn't mention, I don't know why, 2 years ago, I received my Cherokee name. So it was
Yes.
through a whole journey and process because your Cherokee name is given to you by your grandmother. My grandmother's passed on. My mom, as I mentioned, passed on all my aunts. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get my Cherokee name? So I worked with a gentleman, Cherokee, who's a red fire priest. that we did ceremony, where in ceremony he connected with his grandmother that connected to my grandmother. And I went to Tucson, Arizona with a few of my sisters, Jenny and Gabby, and we participated in this ceremony. We're right next to one of the birthing rocks where the women used to go and give birth. This
Yeah.
beautiful canyon. We're in the middle of nowhere. And for me, once he said my Cherokee name, which is Lion Mother, Dedeji Eji in Cherokee, I just like burst out crying. I just like cried because it touched my soul and touched my spirit. And once I got my name, I felt like a sense of responsibility, because Lion Mother in Cherokee is a big deal, because mother is the backbone of our community and society. And the lion, or in my case, lioness, sits on the stone above the community and overlooks and protects the community. So I'm a protector of the community. And that was actually before I got my awards. Not that I did anything to get the awards. I mean, not that I did do stuff, but I mean, that was not my intention. But I'm like, okay, it upped my responsibility. So the reason I got the Seven Feathers Award, I approached our chief and said, I want to do something for the young people. And he goes, well, what did you have in mind? I said, I want to do a free leadership seminar. So I did Cherokee Wisdom, and it was in 6 sessions, 15 minutes each. And we had over 3,600 young people participate.
Ah,
And so that's why, I mean, my intention was like, I need to be responsible. I need to help, because in Cherokee, what leaders are taught to consider 7 generations in the past, or remember 7 generations in the
right.
past,
And then,
and consider 7 generations in the future. So I'm like, how can I, while I'm still on this planet, invest in the young people? And this was all done virtually during the pandemic. And I still get emails from some of the students saying, thank you so much. It was empowering, it was inspiring. And so my action comes out of a sense of responsibility for my community. And the end result just so happens to be recognition. But that's not my
right,
goal.
exactly.
Recognition
Yeah.
is just an affirmation.
It comes from being in community. The community, when you are a life-giving force like you are, then of course then they acknowledge you. But that's such a beautiful thing. And I could just feel like 3,600 young people, because there's so much separation of that. If you look at mainstream, it'll say, oh, young people don't care about older people. Older people don't care about young people. Just all this craziness, where we understand that as women, and it's clearly as Indigenous women, as Latinas, that it's community. It's La Familia, it's the community, the Indigenous, your tribe, and larger, the whole hoop of life, which is your community. So thank you. I love that. And I love that these wonderful young people, when some people say, oh, we don't have much of a future, I'm like, I don't know who you're talking about. I talk to a lot of young people just as you do, and they're amazing. They really get it. And they're not buying into all the consumption or just more, me. I hear many of them like, okay, they care about the water and they care about the earth and they care about each other, and they're suffering with the mass and things. They're doing it to be safe, but underneath it all, they know it's love. And when I heard that from like 12 and 14-year-olds a couple months ago, um, I just was like, oh my, we are an amazing part of this hoop of life. So just
And I couldn't
appreciate
agree
it.
with you more, because my experience with Gen Z, and Gen Z is 15 to 25, that age group, they're so inspiring. They inspire me, because what I love about them is acceptance.
Mm,
They accept everyone, and they don't have boxes. They don't like to put themselves in boxes, even when it comes to like sexuality.
mhm.
They just want, they flow, and they
Yes.
really passionate about what they care about. And a lot of them care about, environmentalism, gun control. And so they want to make the world a better place. So I actually, they give me hope. They give me
Yes.
so much hope for the future.
Yes, I agree. So much, so much. So let me ask you, um, many people see you as a leader, whether and I know you see yourself as one too, but since you're such an honored leader, who do you look to that you admire their leadership and
Mhm.
why?
So right away, two women come to mind. The first is Wilma Mankiller.
Mm,
Wilma Mankiller was the only female principal chief of the Cherokees. She was principal chief for 10 years. And she was an amazing woman. She actually got the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I think Clinton gave it to her because I think she was, I want to say 85 to 95, our principal chief. But she also, I believe that women leadership style is different. Women lead from social power, men lead from individual power. And there's not judgment. And I didn't make this stuff up. This is in the leadership books.
mm,
But what happened is she came in, and at that time, there was an issue of whether or not our tribe should consider gaming, because a lot of the tribes were.
yeah,
So
gaming was.
she resisted, from what I understand, what I've been told by my mom, she resisted, but she finally gave in with one caveat that all the money that was received from gaming had to go to the greater good. So we built hospitals, we built an educational system, we even have our own, sheriff's department, our judicial system. And she didn't want to give out individual stipends like some tribes do. And as a result, 2 years ago, we just opened the first ever Native American medical school,
Wow.
because we have 10 casinos and it's about $1 billion a year budget. But all of that goes back to the community.
Unity.
And but women think of the community where guys, no offense, guys, they just think differently, and they would have said, oh yeah, let's give everybody an individual stipend. And there's 400,000 of us citizens. And what would that have really done if you give everybody, even if it's a few $1,000s? How is that really teaching them the Cherokee values? So she's first and foremost one of my sheroes, even though I never personally met her. My mom has, and as a matter of fact, on one of my last books, Cherokee Wisdom, I partnered with her nephew, Abraham Bearpaw, and we co-authored Cherokee Wisdom together. The other person that really comes to my mind, and I just recently saw her a couple of weeks ago, is Dolores Huerta. Now,
Oh, yes.
everybody knows of Cesar Chavez because we have holidays, and he was the founder of the United Farm Workers Union. But what a lot of people don't realize is there was a co-founder. There was a woman that did this with them, Dolores Huerta, who is still alive. She's in her 90s. She has like 11 kids, and she persevered, and she became a feminist, and she was just, she's to this day in her 90s like a little dynamo. I mean, she's just so articulate. And so
Yes.
a lot of the people, when they think of the United Farm Workers movement, they think of the saying si se puede, yes we can. She started that was hers. And what happens is, so many times in society, they give the men all the credit. In my opinion, she deserves equal credit because she was co-founder of the Farm Workers Union. And I've had the great honor of meeting her and on several occasions. And I actually worked with her grandson, did some free executive coaching with him. So when I think of women, I think of these, excuse my language, badass women that persevere, that lead our people, not from an ego standpoint, but because what's right. And
Yes.
so, unfortunately, I didn't meet her till, I was already an adult, but I could just see these women from afar and know what they went through to get where they're at. And it was all I don't, maybe it's not the right word, but sacrifice for their people. And maybe sacrifice is the right word, because when you're that involved, sometimes, like with Dolores Huerta, they made a documentary about her and her family. When you have 11 kids and you're out there, protesting all the time. And it wasn't until she actually, it was a feminist protest, I believe in New York, that the cops beat her up and she ended up in a coma. And that's when all her family came around her and all her kids came around her, and they were able to make amends.
Oh,
So
that's good.
women, those are the two women that come to mind when what
Powerful.
inspires me. And I'm like, if I could be that selfless and help others to that extent, then that's what I strive for.
Yeah. There's some of my sheroes when I was in college then and writing papers in the 70s and 80s. And both of them came to mind. And I got to march with Dolores Huerta at the University of Colorado, student body president then.
Wow.
Powerhouse, like you're saying, I can't imagine that ever, but there is what you're also noting, and I give gratitude to the families because it's not that she didn't love her family. She was doing what she's doing because she loved her family, but nonetheless, we only have so much time. And so when you aren't there for the in the traditional way that people think women are supposed to be, which is every moment, um, then there's some cost. So I'm so glad when you named that there's also reconciliation, because that's also always possible. And I don't know, I just think it's powerful. So thank you for sharing those two powerful women, Wilma Mankiller and Dolores Huerta. It's clearly, I can see how you took that into your heart and into your hands and your actions, that I can see that energy coming through. So at this point in our conversation, we have about 5 minutes or so left. I want to make sure that you get to share with us whatever it is you want. And it can be in the realm of any or all of these things. Like, so what is a learning that you just want everyone who's listening to take away from them, or a wisdom, or maybe it's even just a dream, and some dream that you have that we can help hold and amplify and spreading it out. So would you please just share with us and take whatever time. When I said 5 minutes, we're fine. Just whatever it is to share, a learning, a wisdom, a dream, or any of all of the above.
Well, I already shared that anything is possible. But what I really want people to understand is all love starts with self-love. You have to really work on yourself and release the emotional baggage. We all have emotional baggage that we accumulate. In life, we have experiences, some good and some bad. So the good ones usually create memories, but the bad ones create emotional baggage. And it shows up as anger, resentment, guilt, shame, insecurities, fear, all this stuff. And so once you learn how to release your emotional baggage and understand that you're complete, it's really giving you that sense of worthiness. So many people feel they're not worthy, and they
Mm,
feel they're not worthy because they're carrying around all this heavy stuff. And society gives us an image for a lot of us feeling that we are not worthy. But each and every one of us is unique, and it's about honoring our uniqueness. The worst thing you can do is compare yourself to other people, because when you compare yourself to other people, you're never going to be the same, because we're all
mm,
unique and different. And how do I know that? We all have different fingerprints. So once you get into really feeling you're worthy and loving yourself and getting rid of your emotional baggage, then the way you show up in the world is very different. It's very different, and people will see you differently. And that doesn't mean there's not going to be haters, because if you're on social media, I found out hard way, they're haters. And somebody was hating on me, and he was saying that I wasn't native and all this stuff. I didn't even know the guy. So my brother and some of my friends saw this, and my brother, called me up and, I'm going to defend you on Facebook. And I'm like, no. He goes, what? I have to defend your honor. I'm like, the guy doesn't even know me. Anybody that knows me knows the truth. I said, just ignore him. I can't ignore him. I said, yes, you can. Please don't say anything. So we all ignored him. And by the next day, he was gone. He moved on to somebody
yes.
else. But when you engage with the haters, that gives them power and they keep going. I know what the truth is. My family and friends know what the truth is. Why are we going to empower somebody that doesn't even know me? So there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be the naysayers, but it's really believing in yourself, knowing that you are worthy, tapping into your power, and tapping into the power, create a support system, like a sisterhood, like we have. And
Mhm.
there's so many like-minded people out there. Find your tribe. It doesn't have to be the Cherokee tribe, but create a space where you have positive, loving, supportive people that can help you rise and shine.
That's a great message to end on. Thank you so much, Cynthia. It's just always a delight to talk with you. And could you tell people, and it will be written as well, but how, if people want to hear more about you or find out more about you, where would you like them to go?
Well, thank you for that. And you can go to my website. My website is my name, Cynthia M. Ruiz. I use my middle initial. So that's Cynthia.MRuiz.com. Any of my books you can get it on Amazon. And I love connecting with people. And I just really feel good about 2022. And you should too, because it's really about the choices that you make. And Anita, like I shared in the beginning, you're somebody that I aspired to be like. And now that I've gotten to know you, I'm just so grateful for the sisterhood and the friendship. And, thank you for everything that you do to make this world a better place.
And right back at you, sister. Thank you. And that's such a great way to end that. We know that we need each other, we love each other, and then we can keep amplifying and spreading that. So if you all, I know your ears, your heart are touched by what you just heard, know that why you were touched is because it's in you as well. And so wishing you the best year also. And yes, there's the love. Love to everyone. And with that, I'll see you at the next two-legged experience. You can go to hear this again at tweleggedexperience.com, and you'll just look under conversations, and you'll find in a few days Cynthia M. Ruiz, Cherokee and Mexican American Latina, and all her wisdom and joy. Just totally sharing that with you. Thank you very much, and have a most wonderful day.